Good morning, East Bay. What is happening in Alameda, Contra Costa, and Solano counties? Learn about what's happening in our communities, an in-depth conversation so you know what's going on. We're talking to government, economic, political, nonprofit, and business leaders here in the greater East Bay. I'm Jared Asch, the host of the Capstone Conversation. Welcome to today's episode of the Capstone Conversation. Today, we are going to visit the town of Orinda in Contra Costa County. We are joined today by Mayor Darlene Gee. And welcome, Mayor.
Thank you, Jared. It's a pleasure to have the time to talk to you today.
Thanks. Can you give us some of your background and maybe tell us a little bit where you come from, how long you've been in council, what your day job is, and anything else you want to touch on for us?
All right. Well, I'm a native Midwesterner. I grew up in Illinois, but I've lived in the Bay Area since 1980, and I've lived in Orinda since 1989. Raised my family here, so very long-term resident, planning to stay. I've been on the city council since 2015. I was fortunate to be appointed to fill Senator Steve Glazer's seat when he was elected to the state Senate. And then I ran in 2016 and 2020. So it's been almost a little over 9 years now that I've been there. This is my second term in time in being the mayor because we rotate. And I am still working full time, much to a lot of people's amazement. But I'm a civil engineer by background, and I work for a large national consulting firm, and we specialize in transportation. So I specialize in transportation infrastructure. So over the last 4 decades, I've been very, very involved in transportation infrastructure and a few other kinds of infrastructure here in the Bay Area. So I bring, I hope, a good regional perspective as well as a very local perspective to Orinda.
So the first thing I'm going to ask is, as a dad of three girls and a woman civil engineer, there's not a ton out there. It is definitely growing, but you have been a leader in that space. What advice do you have to my daughters that are under 10 or future generations of girls to inspire them in engineering and STEM?
Well, I hope you and other adults in their life will find ways to expose them to the opportunity, because you're right, it's a very good opportunity, and there are so many areas and there's so much in the world that's been discussed and shared with, how young girls and women sometimes, turn left instead of right because they're just not comfortable, or people aren't encouraging, or there are a lot of cues that tell them no, they shouldn't do that. And the reality is there are so many fabulous careers and so many fabulous opportunities, and sometimes, you have to be a little tough to get there. When I was in engineering school, I was one of 6 women in a class of 600 civil engineers that year in our college class. So, you have to be a little brave, but it pays off. And I've had a very rewarding career, and I do my very best to encourage young women all the time to try. And it's important. It's very, very important to have a lot of different perspectives in the industry.
That's 1% of the class. I mean, that really is trailblazing in some ways. So I congratulate you for being well respected in your industry and your career and rising through that to be a leader. So tell us a little bit about Orinda. What should people know about your town?
Orinda is a lovely, scenic, very family-oriented community. It has only been a city since 1985, although the community has been here over 100 years. We incorporated in 1985, and we are a very well-run, if small,
Mhm.
city. We are essentially, as many people would guess, we're pretty much a suburban bedroom kind of a community. We're not much of a job center. Historically, we, in the long gone past in the Bay Area, we were kind of a summer place for people escaping the fog on the other side of the hills. And there were a lot of summer homes built in our area, which eventually, as the Bay Area grew, turned into, a very suburban community. So we have a lot of charming things, as many people say, hidden gems. Many people are very familiar with our historic Orinda Theater, which is one of only three remaining theaters in the Bay Area that is the original Art Deco kind of theater. We have a lot of other great, restaurants, activities, just a lot of local charm and a lot of family oriented things. We have a great school system, which many people are aware of and is often the number one reason why people move to Orinda. So all in all, it's a very beautiful, scenic place to live and, a very nice community, which, continues to evolve.
And you guys have the Cal Shakes Theater in Orinda, correct?
Yes, we do. And it's another one of our sort of hidden gems, and it's sort of reinventing itself would be a good way to put it. Obviously, the pandemic was a hard hit to many things like theater and arts and social events, but Cal Shakes is busy, reinventing themselves with a much broader array of entertainment than they had once upon a time. And I think it's going to continue to evolve into a lovely place. It's, if people haven't been there, it's one of the most beautiful places you can be on a nice summer evening outside in a gorgeous setting, to watch either a fabulous play or some kind of music, or it's just a lovely setting.
Great. Let's talk about, you talked about it being a newer city, probably one of the newer ones in the region. And within that council, you guys have had a lot of turnover recently. A lot of veterans of the council had retired in 2022, and you had 3 out of 5 new seats filled. How has that been? I've met them all. They're all really nice people, very smart, but 3 new council members, getting them up to speed. What has that sort of process been to bring them up to speed, mentor them, and what kind of new perspectives have they brought?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting experience, especially for me, Jared, because at this point it's hard for me to believe I'm the most senior serving council member, because my other colleague that is on the same cycle as me, because of my appointment, I have about 18 months more than she does. So it's been really great. It's, it was so hard to lose, some of our long-term serving people like Amy Worth, who is just sort of a Bay Area legend in terms of, how much public service she's done. And so having such a changeover always comes with, everything has opportunity, right? And it's been very interesting to have new perspectives. And I think it's good. I think it's good for all communities. And for those who might not know, our current council is all women. So that's been a big change as well. And we also have our first person of color on our council, which is fabulous. Again, it's a reflection, I think, of the changing demographics and inclusion of our community. And so it's been a great experience. And I think the most valuable part is to have new people that ask questions, that have really intelligent, inquiring minds. And in the process of asking questions, it's really good to revisit things, because sometimes people get stuck in a long thinking process of, oh, this is the way it's been, this is the way it's always been done, this is the way we always do it. And sometimes it's really good to have people really step up and say, well, why? And sort of rethink things. So I think the fresh perspective is absolutely really good for the community, and it's been fun.
Is there any other town that you could think of in the area that has 5 out of 5 women?
Yes, I believe so, because I've been working on a project with the League of California Cities. Right now, I believe Piedmont has an all-woman council. I believe the city of West Sacramento has an all-woman council, and I believe the city of San Luis Obispo has an all-woman council. And I'm sure there must be some other ones in the state, but it's definitely, and even to more amazement, in Orinda, our local Orinda Union School District also has a 5-woman board of trustees right now. So definitely Orinda is seeing a lot of female leadership right at the moment.
That's great. Great to hear. And I like how you talked about the innovative perspective. Do you have any examples of things that have come up where people have just been asking a new question or brought a good view to the equation? No pressure.
Oh,
I'm trying to
that's
recall that memory.
that there are so many issues that a city deals with. I certainly think that there's been an awful lot of good questions raised about our city staff processes, our approach to, a lot of the services that we provide as a community, you know, good questions about, why we're prioritizing certain infrastructure over other things. I mean, just a lot of good, thinking questions, which, lead to good discussions and, help, I think, everybody in the community, continue to understand the issues a lot better.
That makes sense. And I serve as chair of the Walnut Creek Transportation Commission, and we get to make recommendations for developer funds into the city, the TIF funds for years ahead and prioritizing projects. And we recommend it to the city council, who's the ultimate decision. But part of it is like, hey, things have happened and we got to reprioritize, right? Post COVID, transportation world, more people biking, more people moving into apartments in Walnut Creek have all affected like how every couple of years we look at those priorities. So it's probably good to continue to have people ask those questions. What are some of the biggest challenges ahead in Orinda?
Certainly, like almost every city in California, housing. We were very proud that we were one of the earliest communities in the Bay Area that got an approved housing element from the state. But that doesn't quite mean that that the story is over. We have worked very hard because, like a lot of places in California, our city is essentially pretty much built out. We don't have a lot of, completely green space. Our growth potential is really, infill for the most part, and being very creative. We have, for the last 8 years, really had a very major program called Plan Orinda that has been about revitalizing our small downtown, which for decades has been a controversial topic, if you can believe that, in Orinda. Some people want everything to stay absolutely the same, and other people want it to transform mightily into a much more vibrant downtown. So we've had an awful lot there, but now, even with our approved housing element last year, now we're battling. We were sued, and so we're still have that in progress. And we also are at the stage where we are required to start rezoning, and that has raised a lot of new interest in what is going on. So trying to comply with the state's housing requirements and do it in a way that the community is supportive is a huge challenge. It is probably our biggest challenge, and there we're very much in sync with a lot of other communities. Another key issue here in Orinda that's, just paramount, is in everyone's mind every day, is fire prevention. We are very much a high risk community. A lot of the beauty and a lot of the scenic part of Orinda is because when people moved here, they planted enormous amounts of trees and vegetation, and we nestle up to the backside of the Berkeley Oakland Hills. And for those that remember the Oakland Hills fire in the early 90s, we're kind of the mirror image on the other side. So that's a very big topic as well.
And what are some of the things the city's doing to address fire safety for people?
One very important thing that we did, Jared, was in 2020, we were able to get the community to pass an additional local sales tax, which has provided monies both for more fire prevention activities as well as to continue to support our infrastructure. We, for a small community, we were incredibly successful at revitalizing almost all of our roads and street drains over local bond and sales tax measures. So our Measure R in 2020 added monies that we were able to tap into. We're working very closely with our fire district, which is the Moraga Orinda Fire District. So the city doesn't provide the fire services, but we work in close conjunction with our special district agency. And so we have pushed very hard to make sure that we're doing all the vegetation removal and compliance that we can do as the city on our properties. We work closely with MOFD to provide education, outreach. We have a mountain of available material to help people in terms of understanding how to manage their own yards, their own property. We're working very hard on evacuation issues, evacuation routes, working very closely with the fire district in terms of, maintaining compliance along those evacuation routes. We have a lot in motion. We actually have two full-time staff members in our tiny little city that are, one of them is fully devoted to our education and outreach and fire prevention, and the other one supports it part-time. So we have a lot of emphasis on, a topic that we want to have forefront in everybody's mind here in Orinda.
That's great. That is a lot of bandwidth to put towards that in your city and a lot of concentration, but right, you never want to have the avenue. You never want to have to worry about it, or you want to be prepared when it does happen. What's the one thing on fire safety you want people in Orinda to know about? What's the one thing they should know?
The one thing that they should absolutely know is that there are a lot of resources for them to find on our website, on the fire district's website, and they should concentrate on what it takes to safely maintain their own property. There are so many things they can do in terms of vegetation management, in terms of ember resistant vents, in terms of gutter guards that are supplied for free by our fire district, again, to help prevent vegetation, leaves, embers. Learning a lot about fire science over the last 10 years has been a real education, but it's a very real and scary topic here and in California. And so doing everything people can and knowing what they should be doing on their own property, I think is absolutely critical. And the very linked corollary to that is making sure they understand that they've signed up for all the emergency notifications, that they know that they have a plan, that they know what they should be paying attention to and what they should do in a worst case scenario. Those are the two things that go the furthest, I think, in terms of helping to protect the community and helping to protect people's lives.
Great. And we'll add to the show notes for anybody who's curious about that, where the city's website to find more information and also how to sign up for those alerts for people who live in Orinda, and for other cities to hopefully copy.
Yeah.
You mentioned the sales tax, which passed in 2020. What else is the additional sales tax going to fund in Orinda?
In addition to our fire prevention efforts, the other area that it funds is the maintenance of our infrastructure. So we use it to continue to maintain roads, drainage, any projects that affect the community's infrastructure. So we are very fortunate that, 10 years ago, we on MTC's list of road conditions of cities in the Bay Area, we were third from the bottom. And last year we were number two from the top. So we have made a huge difference in the community's infrastructure, and we want to keep it maintained. And we continue, like all places in the Bay Area, everything is just about at that age where it needs to be replaced. It's like anything. It's like your home, your car, you've got to do maintenance to keep it in good shape. And we have a lot of old storm drains and a lot of old things that need to be upgraded. So that's the source of money for a lot of our maintenance.
That's great. You mentioned housing. What is the city's plan for housing? Has there been any interest in that, particularly in the downtown area, in the area near the BART station? How do the building property owners feel? What interest has there been from developers? What can you share with us?
Absolutely. In fact, the number one location for the greatest amount of planned projected housing in Orinda is in our downtown area. You know, we feel there's the opportunity there for some transformation of, you know, what is currently essentially older single story, you know, buildings that, you know, have a variety of purposes, commercially, retail. You know, there's an opportunity there. In this cycle of the housing element, Jared, we did not include the BART station property itself. We are very, very fortunate that, you know, right in the center, in fact, actually, since Highway 24 kind of splits our downtown and the BART station is right in the middle of it, we are very fortunate that, you know, we have an incredible transit linkage, you know, right connected to our downtown, which is very valuable, always has been, and will continue to be so as we look at, you know, ways to grow and improve. But we have, you know, our current plan shows a lot of opportunity for development in downtown Orinda for including housing. And then we have started conversations. We were fortunate to receive an MTC grant to begin studying the BART station. Our BART station is particularly complicated because it actually is on property that is owned by Caltrans because it's in the state highway median. And BART actually has a lease on the property. They do not own it. So a number of years ago, if you recall, there was a law passed in California called AB 2923, which allowed BART to begin to build housing on station sites that it owned. Orinda was not included in that because they do not own the property that the Orinda BART station is on. So there are some extra complications, but there is definitely a very good long-term opportunity at our BART station and connected with our downtown that, you know, we hope to see developed in a good way. I think the key for Orinda, I think what people would really like to see if we got the perfect outcome, Jared, is we would love to see revitalization that included housing, new opportunities for commercial and retail that also fit into the community, right? I think the number one thing that people hope won't happen is we don't want to see, you know, true high-rise buildings in what is a very, you know, small and generally semi-rural looking community. And, you know, so the trade-offs of trying to achieve housing and vibrancy with, you know, trying to maintain a look and feel that people are comfortable with it's a huge challenge. And so far, you know, so far we have nothing that's actually in progress. We're in the process right now of finishing our objective design standards for downtown and our rezoning. But ultimately, depending on where the economic climate goes, I think it's pretty easy to see that we would be a location that, you know, development would be interested in.
Yeah, and that's interesting to learn about the ownership of the BART tracks and the parking lots because if you look at the towns in the stop after you, the Walnut Creek stop, the Pleasant Hill stop, the Concord stop, they have all had massive development right on their parking lots where apartment buildings, condos have gone up with retail coffee shops in them.
Yeah. So it will be interesting to see what evolves over time. We actually, and some of the thoughts, and certainly something I would hope for in the long term is that, the right kind of project built in the BART station area, would also help connect our two pieces of downtown together better. Because, literally right now we have downtown and commercial things on both sides of Highway 24 with the BART station right in between. So again, there's the opportunity there to hope that in the end, there's a feel of a little bit more continuity with the right development.
Yeah, interesting. So now I want to look at a bigger picture on your professional background with regional transportation infrastructure. I have actually gotten to know you a little bit through the Bay Area Council, where you serve as co-chair of the Bay Area Council's Transportation Task Force. Let's solve every regional transportation problem right now through that civil engineering's perspective. So we all know what the problems are. There's a lot of people, little room to go. COVID threw us all through a loop. But what do you see from just your perspective as one or two of the bigger challenges, and what can be done to, or what's being discussed to look at these problems? I know
Yeah,
that's a
I think
broad question, so just
Well, I think unless you haven't left your house recently, most people in the Bay Area realize that our traffic and our highway traffic is back to being as bad as pre-pandemic levels, and data is actually showing in a couple of places it's actually worse than the traffic was before COVID. So clearly people are again, needing mobility, and primarily because of COVID and so many changes in how people are working, the traffic is as miserable as ever. So, and as we all know, here in the Bay Area, our public transit systems, whether it's BART, Caltrain, VTA, SFMTA, all the transit systems are operating currently at below, their pandemic ridership. So, without a doubt, and there are a lot of things that people talk about relative to our transit systems, and many things people are concerned about. But without a doubt, providing better, safer, secure, connected transit throughout the Bay Area is just going to be critical to the long term. There are a lot of different thoughts about how do you do that? Should you consolidate all the various transit agencies? There have been BART has made a lot of improvements over the last year. People may not see them yet if they haven't really tried to take BART again, but there has to be everything done possible to make transit attractive again, to make it accommodate people's sort of new lifestyles. And I think there's been a lot of discussion about that, because in some places the ridership on transit is much higher on the weekends, and for sporting events, other events that are going on, than it is for what was historically a go to work and come home kind of commute activity. So we can't live with a high quality of life in the Bay Area without good transit. So there has to be solutions to that, absolutely. And then I think that after that, I still think there's an awful lot going on in the technology world, right? And when I say technology, I mean relative to transportation, that, more managed lanes, more things that, automated vehicles. I do think over time we will see, things there that will continue to improve people's lives. And again, it'll be interesting how it all comes together, but I think that's not an area to be ignored for the long haul in terms of trying to solve people's mobility challenges. So there's an awful lot that's going on, and there's always more need than there is money, as you're well aware. The Bay Area is struggling with trying to think about a new regional measure. I don't know that the temperature right now of the voters in the Bay Area is really feeling it. But I think, over time, there's going to have to be improvements because mobility is just one of the very basics, that people need in their life, whether it's for work or fun or family or whatever it is, people have to get places. And, right now, I think in a lot of respects, we're kind of back to a really unhappy environment in the Bay Area in that regard. Most of us that are out driving around are finding ourselves in pretty ugly traffic.
Yeah, and I was just in Florida where I finished high school. We were visiting my parents down there, and it's been a long time since I've driven down there and got turned around and ended up on a side road instead of the interstate. And I went in between, I just said, oh, well, I'll go this way. I know where I am on the street. It was a straight lane through four towns, and I probably went through the equivalent of 40 or 50 traffic lights. But I hit all but two of them as a green once I got into like the sync of it. And I moved through those couple of towns fairly quickly at an average speed of probably 45 miles an hour. And it just flowed so much better because they were taking people off the roads into the housing developments, turn lanes into the shopping centers. And I hate to compare anything in Florida to California. I clearly live here. I think it's superior of a state, but that was an advantage at that moment, right? It just flowed together. I wasn't sitting traffic light after traffic light at 8 miles an hour waiting for everybody else. So something I noticed around that.
Yeah, and it is noticeable in other areas. So yes, we have a lot to figure out here in the Bay Area. I agree with you. I've lived here for decades, and it's a place with so many wonderful advantages, but mobility is a challenge. And I think the other thing, Jared, that has to happen is, and this has kind of been lost, people forget so quickly, but before the pandemic, transportation was a very high priority to many of the politicians at every level in the Bay Area. In today's polling, transportation often isn't even in the top 10.
Mm.
And there is an awful lot of, as you know, from term limits and just changes going on, there's going to be an awful lot of new elected people at every level, local, state, federal, related to the Bay Area. And I think the other thing that simply has to happen if our transportation and mobility issues are going to be solved is our leadership needs to care about it. So between, the voters and the leadership, there has to be a resurgence of priority for transportation because right now it's at the lowest I've ever seen it in terms of polling.
That's interesting. That was something new I learned today. So, and if people want specifics on transportation, you can go back to one of the earlier episodes I had with Tim Hale from CCTA, and we'll have other regional transportation experts on and more specific transportation episodes coming up. So, thank you for that. Anything I didn't ask you yet today that you wanted to share?
Definitely come visit Orinda. Enjoy our theater and enjoy our park, our Cal Shakes opportunities. It's a lovely setting. It's a good place to spend some of your summer. On Thursday nights, we have food trucks in next to our community center and park, and we have a very nice venue for a very enjoyable time. So do come visit us. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of hidden gems and we're very proud of it. And I really want to thank you today. I've enjoyed the conversation and appreciate your interest.
All right. Thank you for being here. Jared Gee from Orinda. Thanks for joining me today. Wait, don't leave yet. Hit subscribe. Make sure you get the weekly updates. We have a new episode every Wednesday for stuff happening in the East Bay. In the meantime, follow me on LinkedIn, Jared Asch, or check out our firm where we have a weekly newsletter and blog at Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us today on the Capstone Conversation.